All right, another launch week in the books. This one was an absolute banger. We crossed a lot of different product announcements, and excited to discuss the week with both of you. So first, let's start off with the introduction. I'm Bob Tordella, help manage our sales and partnerships. Dave.
Hi, Dave Boki. I manage our customer relationships.
I'm Nathan Wallace. I'm the founder and CEO here and oversee a lot of the product stuff.
Great. Well, it's good talking with you both. Going to have some good coverage to talk about what's exciting about the announcements and any insights that you guys want to share about the product features and some of the customer requests that led to those features. So to first start off, we'll talk about Monday announcements. So Monday was all about guardrail product updates, and two specific ones were kind of related to each other on the Get It to Green with real-time remediation for Azure and Google CIS controls. Dave, why don't you, if you don't mind, just some background to what is that Get It to Green concept, and this actually sounds familiar to something that we did last launch week as well.
Get It to Green is essentially the idea that there's organizations out there that just want their CIS report to have no issues, have no observations, no findings on them. For a long time within Guardrails, you've been able to run your CIS reports, see your compliance level across all of your projects, your AWS accounts, your Azure subscriptions. And we've had tools within Guardrails as well that would allow you to automatically remediate many of the issues that were found by those reports. What we've done is we've put together some policy packs of automated controls that allow you to take the information that Guardrails is seeing about your compliance status and actually run those enforcements in your environment and keep you in that green state, keep you fully compliant with CIS controls and policies. They're aligned to those standards, and as those standards and update over time, we'll improve those and add new capabilities to the tool as well. Last launch week, we launched the Get It Green for AWS. This launch week, we've extended that so that we have the full set of controls for both GCP and for Azure to really look at all aspects of those CIS reports, look at the things that can be done through automation, and where things can be fixed through automation, give our customers options to be able to do that automatically versus having to manually remediate those areas.
Yeah, I mean, with CIS, it seems to be like the go-to benchmark for our customers. And there's a whole heap of them from like NIST and HIPAA, et cetera. But we always see that CIS is like much more prescriptive defined, and so easy for us to tie those recommendations to guardrails that we have in place. And I think with that, we added a ton of controls along with these announcements.
Yeah, we really looked at each and every control. What was the control objective that CIS had designed into that? And then said, how would we achieve that through guardrails? If we didn't have something that we could do with that, we actually added new controls to the product that would allow us to address it more directly. So it was not just a mapping exercise, so to speak, and because we've done those mappings before of, hey, here's the guardrails control for the CIS control, but really looking at what CIS was trying to achieve and making sure that we had things within the product that could go and address that. A lot of organizations feel like they're under control, but companies will bring in third-party auditors. They will look at CIS as the gold standard benchmark. Whether you're meeting those controls in a different way sometimes becomes not as important as just being able to tell your senior leadership that, hey, yeah, we're completely green with this specific set of requirements.
The big thing is that we forget, because we've done it so long, is like fixing these things automatically to get to green and stay green is just so hard without a tool like this. Like, you're just running around, you've got like, your security tools giving you reports and alerts, and then you're like, what do? You take that huge list, you start walking around talking to different teams. Would you please fix it? Come on, like, just do it already. Let's make it get there. It's just a nightmare to do. And you want to like, and even if you get it done, the next day they create something new and you're not green again, right? And so being able to actually enforce these things, get them to green, keep them green, like with us, find them, then do quick actions to fix them if you want to, do them progressively, then just turn on that enforcement so it's done instantly all the time. That's a really big deal compared to the alternative. So yeah, it's super exciting to have just what people want. CIS green right there, turn it on if that's what you want.
Often those programs just lead to maybe just making an exception to not fix the problem.
Exactly.
Right? It's too expensive or too hard once you let it for too long.
You finally chase it down, and then the next day something comes out and it all just goes red again. It's just like, ugh, Yeah.
So just an extraordinarily hard problem to do at scale across many, many, many accounts. If you got one or two accounts and a handful of resources, you can achieve this in a couple of weeks. But if you've got hundreds or even thousands of accounts, as some of our customers do, it's an extraordinarily difficult problem to do at scale and to keep track of exceptions at scale, et cetera. And using our tools allows you to do that in a very robust and auditable way.
Yeah, and just from a resource management perspective, I mean, one of the other big announcements was around taking the automated discovery, cloud discovery work that we've done over the past few launch weeks to syncing that into your ServiceNow CMDB. We did come out with another integration approach instead of a direct to a CMDB CI table. Now you can stage that data through import sets, and so that was another big announcement that happened on Monday. So Dave, I know you work with a lot of enterprises within this type of space, and often we're tightly integrated, or at least working with the ServiceNow team from either taking data from ServiceNow, bringing it into Turbot Guardrails, or vice versa, pushing data to ServiceNow. This now just adds another type of integration approach that should help satisfy a lot of the enterprise needs.
A lot of enterprises, their critical processes in terms of IT support, et cetera, all drive through ServiceNow. And they really look for the CMDB in ServiceNow to be the single source of truth in terms of who owns the application, who are the users affected, those types of things. So when you have dynamic cloud infrastructure that's moving all the time, changing all the time, ephemeral servers are coming up, coming down, et cetera, having guardrails serve the purpose of listening to all the events that are happening, dynamically updating ServiceNow with those details so that they're complete and up to date when you do have an outage or an event or something where get to resolution quickly is of paramount importance to many of our customers.
Hey, Bob, when you're talking with customers about ServiceNow stuff, what the import sets, I think they let you do a lot of transformations and other things. Like, why is that so interesting? Like, compared, we already have sync of the data directly. Like, why do import sets matter? Like, what's the driver for that?
Yeah, I mean, it's over. Our features that we announced the last few launch weeks, we do a direct sync to the ServiceNow CMDB table. So we handle the transformation through our Turbot policy. So you can actually configure what type of data and how does it look that gets transformed and then loaded into ServiceNow. The reason why import sets was kind of the next major requirement coming from enterprise, that for a few like financial service enterprises that have a lot of data integrations for all different types of platforms talking to each other, they often don't do a direct approach to integrating and updating tables or data within a source system. They typically stage it. And import sets in ServiceNow is more of a staging area. And so we can then sync to that staging area, and it could be transformed before it gets there to make it easy. But then the client or the enterprise is much more in control of how that data then is transformed and then loaded. And so it just gets them in more control, and it allows a similar pattern to how they're doing all their other data processing across the business. And so with import sets, that is a pattern that a lot of enterprises do appreciate, but also we can help simplify that with the direct integration with our other features. So we're excited to get that out there and just really satisfy any type of enterprise nuance that we're coming across for the CMDB sync. So moving on to Tuesday, it was another actually big Guardrails day. We couldn't fit it all in one day, so we split out the two. But one of the big announcements was the Guardrails Hub. And so similar to our Steam Pipe Hub, our Power Pipe Hub, or Flowpipe Hub, this is a central location for all things guardrails. And so, Dave, you want to maybe walk us through, what is the Guardrails Hub and why did we create one for guardrails in line to how we did it with our other projects?
With Guardrails, one of the things that I've always been really proud of, professional services team at Turbot, we work with many customers to understand their control objectives and then translate those into Guardrails configuration that they could run at scale. And this has always been a bit of a manual process in terms of working with each customer, understanding what their needs are, fleshing that out over a series of meetings, configuring guardrails, testing that, and then delivering that back to them. It was a one-on-one kind of conversation with an individual customer. One of the things that the hub does, it allows us to now share those control objectives, those individual control objectives in a way that can uplift all customers, where the work that we're doing as a professional services team, the work that we're doing as a support and a product team, we can now share those configurations in an open source repo and then have a web front end to that where people can search and find specific control objectives that they're interested in and they want to deploy. Really, heart of the hub is this collection of what we call policy packs, which are essentially guardrails configuration that allows you to run automations within your environment to achieve specific control objectives. Anything from FinOps control that allows you to decommission unattached volumes within your environment, to tagging controls, to security related controls, networking controls, IAM, et cetera. So different control objectives, I think 140 plus we launched with a set that we were really, proud to put out there and in the hands of customers and get their feedback. The other key capability of the hub is as a reference document for our mod. Today, we currently support running controls across AWS, Azure, GCP, Kubernetes, ServiceNow, and Guardrails itself. We've always had in our documentation some way to browse the mods that were available and the documentation behind them. It's even in the product to a certain degree that you can see those things. What is interesting with the hub is that you can now see all of that in one place. I can easily browse and go from tab to tab and see all of the policies, the 6,700 policies associated with the AWS mod, 1,800 policies in the Azure mod, et cetera. I can browse those in one list. I can search, find, and understand the details of that. So when I'm trying to build a new policy pack or when I'm trying to uplift my organization and do something specific, and quickly browse and see what capabilities are in Guardrails and how to implement that, and might even give me new ideas of things that I can do that I wasn't even aware of. I had a customer this morning that I was working with and sharing the new hub with them. They were just like, oh, it's so great to see all this in one place. And that was really what we were going for. So I was really happy with that feedback directly from them of, just the ability to be able to browse and search those things in one place is excellent.
We realized a few years ago that the sheer scope and breadth of stuff we're covering when you do like cloud control like we do with Guardrails is just so insane. Like Dave said, 7,000 for AWS, another couple of thousand for Azure, GCP. It's like 12,000 or something policies. And we're not talking about like, random things. Like that's an actionable, doable, settable thing in the Guardrails environment, which is just insane. And we've worked really hard over the years to create a great information architecture for arranging those, et cetera. And I think the hub really makes that just so much easier to understand and comprehend as a user. So it was great to pull all that data together. We did launch 143 policy packs, like David said, and they serve key goals like turning on AWS CIS enforcements or like fixing a whatever a cost-saving measure around the snapshots or the volumes. These are each actionable things that you can do. It's a higher order language for us to talk in compared to the policies themselves or the controls themselves. So I think it's really exciting. But I do want people to understand policy packs are just the start. The 12,000 policies behind it where there's just infinite power, and the policy packs are the ones which are most commonly used and deployed and used by us. So we'll keep expanding that with time. But man, if you dig in there, you're going to find a control and a policy for pretty much everything you can imagine in the world of Guardrails that we've built out. The other thing I'm really excited about with the hub's the way that it integrates with your workspace. So you can register your workspace URL, and then in the hub, you can like look for something, find it, and just click and go straight to your workspace and view it in that environment. So it's kind of quite a nice way to be interactive between the different elements.
I love that aspect of it. The ability to have deep links back into your Guardrails workspace is great. One of the things I wanted to also say is like, we're dogfooding this ourselves, right? We talked for our Monday releases on getting CIS to green. All of those releases are policy packs that we've delivered through this format. The professional services team, the support team, when we work with customers and we understand those things, we're going to deliver each of those as policy packs and then deliver the policy pack to the customer. So just the simple fact that we're dogfooding and doing that ourselves, it's going to continue to grow and expand over time. Super excited as well that behind the policy packs is an open source repo that our customers can now contribute to, or even just open issues against existing things. And we can just, continuously improve that over time and might become a resource overall for our industry in terms of a great source of controls that you can run beyond CIS, see what other, companies are interested in enforcing and making sure works within their environment. Something like, for example, a customer that was looking to limit controls when running GitHub pipelines. They're running a GitHub pipeline, and the result of that pipeline is doing something within their AWS account. They wanted to make sure that the IAM role associated with that only trusts their GitHub organization, and someone couldn't create a GitHub pipeline in a different org that would drive changes within their environment. That type of policy pack, which was very specific to an individual use case, but other customers will see that now and be able to leverage it and use it and do interesting things with it as well.
For me, someone who helps out a lot of new customers to Guardrails and getting started through free trials, this is just a pick list for them to get started. Because Guardrails is an open-ended platform. You could choose your adventure. Everything's turned off by default. And so, coming to the hub and being able to work out, what are maybe the top 5 policy packs I'll start with is a huge game changer for people. Just, being able to pick and choose versus having a large set of, what could possibly be done. And so I'm excited for that user experience for those getting started. And then also for current customers to say, oh, well, what's next? What are some ideas that other people are doing? What's the latest policy pack that was just committed into the hub? So really excited for those use cases and that experience. Love the shareability of it because I've just used it multiple times today. So really excited just from a pure doc perspective, which I don't think a lot of people really appreciate, but we at Turbot, we treat that as like a product.
We did a lot of discussion, like even in a policy pack, all the file names are very deliberate. The naming of the resources, they happen to be defined in Terraform because that's a convenient way to do it, but they're designed so you can take 5 policy packs we've done and compose them into your own definition of a policy pack for your organization and stuff as well. So it should really accelerate people through those use cases too. But yeah, we enjoy sweating details like that. Yeah, well, I do especially, and I think others do, to a reasonable degree.
Well, yeah, it was an exciting day for those announcements, and really looking forward to getting more of our customers involved in the hub. Moving on to Wednesday, that whole day was focused on Flowpipe and just a huge amount of new mods that were announced, as well as a new feature for the CLI. Try to break it down because there's new tagging mods, detecting correct tagging mods. There's new FinOps mods. There's a new interactive flow in the terminal. So let's just start with maybe tagging. This is part of that suite of detect and correct mods that we announced last launch week. And so Nathan, why don't you bring us through the journey of what is detect and correct, and then specifically for tagging, what was announced recently?
As we know, Flowpipe is really designed for those sort of DevOps workflows, sort of help you do or achieve things in your environment. And what we see with that is there's just a whole bunch of really common patterns you want to do as an organization. And so what we've been doing with those mods is trying to ask, what's the best way to represent those patterns, produce those as mods, which you can just use out of the box, right? And so detect and correct is the key pattern that we saw there. How do I find a problem, review it, and fix it, right? And it's pretty simple concept, but there's a lot you can do with that. So last time we launched AWS Thrifty Detect and Correct, a whole bunch of ways to save money against your Amazon account, find the problem, ask you the question, do you want to fix this? Yes, no, and then fix it, or you can do it automatically, etc. We thought that pattern was really working. So in our usual form, we went for it. So now you've got, Thrifty controls for AWS, Azure, and Google, right, to save money across all those 3 different clouds. And then as you asked, tagging is the other big one. And so we've done tagging controls for AWS, Azure, and Google as well to basically say, how can I find problems with my tags, and then review them and fix them. And that's what these mods allow you to do. So what sort of problems do you have in tagging that you want to fix? And you guys know this better than me, but generally I have mandatory tags I need to have on every resource in my organization. We must always have a cost center environment on my tags. So we have an easy way in the controls to be able to do that. You just say, if this tag isn't there, add it with this default value. One definition can work across. Another one might be, oh, okay, well, I need to fix keys. Like someone called it cost center, someone did it cost center capital letters, someone else did it, CC, they're different. How do I coerce those to be the same as part of my tag standardization strategy for the organization? So the tagging mods support that. You can say match key patterns, either exact words or through regular expressions. It's very flexible actually, how you can do that matching. And then just say, if you see this tag or key name, change it to be this standardized form of that. So that's really powerful for for doing those sorts of things. The next one might be actually the values. Your environment wants to be, dev, QA, or prod. Nothing else is acceptable. So we have to standardize, the values out on those tags as well to make sure that they're correct and coming through properly. So what we've done is we've sort of outlined various tagging patterns like that of common things you want to do or fix, created really simple definitions for how you can define those in the mod, and then you can run that. The simplest way to run it as a wizard, which you can now do in your terminal, I'll talk about in a minute, or you can go further and say, run this and send it to Slack for approval, yes, no, or just do it automatically as soon as you find it, no approvals required, right? So these mods support all those different run modes with very simple sort of definitions for how to define those tagging strategies that you have for your organization. I did drop in there that we did the new interactive terminal thing. We're really excited about that. We think it changes how Flowpipe feels quite dramatically. Like, we've always seen Flowpipe as being used for workflow. And so Flowpipe's really able to ask you human questions. It can take automated action through functions, Lambda style functions, or running containers, or, pipeline things like talking to the web, web endpoints, etc. But it can also ask you a question, right? Get input from you. Do you want to do this? Yes or no? What's the name of that? Get a text input. It can do those things. Now we support just doing those natively in a terminal. So when you run these tagging mods first up, and basically it comes along, it goes, okay, I found this S3 bucket, it's missing this tag and it's going to remove that one. Do you want to do that? Yes, you apply it or skip it, and you go apply, and then the terminal just comes down to the next thing and does it. And so you can write those workflows now and just use them in the terminal like a really nice scripting engine. And we know in DevOps, like, you want to say yes or no a lot of the time. It's a bit scary when things happen without the chance to review it first. So that human input's really important. But once you get that going in the terminal, you can just change the notifier to be Slack, and boom, the same questions work. No change to your code. All those same things now work by sending it to a Slack endpoint or sending it to an email endpoint. So it's really fast for development, gives you a lot of control over the flow for those sort of detect and correct questions, and it all just works without you having to do any heavy lifting at all. So it's a huge bundle of stuff in Flowpipe, and we're excited about it.
Yeah, and especially from a tagging standpoint, I mean, there's infinite possibilities of how things can be tagged. I think working with customers from Guardrails, Pipes, etc., it is the biggest operational problem that folks have.
Yeah.
Freeform, and then they're trying to apply standards, and you have to do that after the fact, or worse, you're doing it up front and doing preventative controls if they don't tag correctly, which could be frustrating the user experience.
Right.
But like here, it's almost like kind of the starting experience of these tagging mods it's kind of just like a self checklist. I mean, when you're working with or in your own terminal, you run those mods, and then it's coming back to you saying, hey, do you want to skip this? Do you want to fix it? And then you can also just farm it out to your team as well. And it's all the same mod with very little uplift in configuration. So it's just a huge like personal developer experience, but then also farming that out to your team. So yeah, excited to see those come through with the new terminal feature.
Yeah.
But then on the same sense, like we often see kind of tagging as a big concept, and then but in that FinOps type of perspective. But then on the other side of that FinOps is also the financial controls, like how do I actually save money on my bill and my usage in the cloud? So maybe if you could talk about some of the new workflows for FinOps that we came out with for Azure and Google.
Yeah, so I mean, it's often the standard things like, how do I clean up unused resources, resize things that seem to be too large, etc. So it's those same patterns, just applied across each of the different cloud providers. And so the questions can be quite sophisticated, as in like, okay, it's running this size and it's CPU's here, so we should reduce it down. Like, those sorts of questions are done as simple pipelines, through to the basics like, oh, you've got an unattached IP address, let's release it, right? So yeah, those are the sorts of things we've done in those FinOps pipelines there. They're really easy to run against your account, save you a lot of money if you do it. And like I said, you can just schedule them out, so they'll just sit there and look for those things anytime you wanted to find them, if that's how you prefer.
Yeah, no, it's an exciting suite of new features for tagging and FinOps, and excited for the more suites of detect and correct type of mods that will be coming out in the near future.
Right.
So that day was on Flowpipe. Moving on to Thursday, That day was all about Turbot Pipes. And
Hmm.
one of the biggest announcements, or the big announcement there was, connecting your Amazon orgs, your Azure tenants, and your Google organizations all in one full swoop to your pipes
Right.
work. This has been a huge customer request for
Yeah.
folks that are now trying to scale their entire org, not just a handful of Amazon accounts or Azure subs. Now
Yeah.
it's like, oh no, this is great. I'm going to bring in everything.
Yes.
So maybe if we could start from like, why did we come up with this feature? What are some of the main benefits of this integration that's a bit unique from a pipe standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, why? It's people just kept asking. So we see people come in, play with pipes, enjoy it, try to onboard another account. And they're like, wait, how do I get them all in? And we're like, well, you can use Terraform, etc. And these are reasonable answers, but they're not great answers. So, then the question came, well, how do I really discover my stuff in? So, that became very clearly what we needed to do. And it was a lot of work for us. We worked on it for quite a while, actually, to make sure we really got it right. There were quite a few changes we had to do to make it much more sophisticated through those levels to detect that. I mean, our customers already in pipes have hundreds and hundreds of accounts, subscriptions, projects, etc. And so just being able to discover that instantly, and then we've got others, much bigger environments, sort of looking at that as well. So how do we really get that sucked in and keep it in sync? Is the other thing, right? It's one thing to set it up once. It's another thing because any org that has lots of accounts just keeps adding them or growing or changing them. So you got to stay in sync. So anyway, what we do now is you can literally just register it, your org, your tenant, or your master account for AWS or whatever, your organization account for AWS, and it'll detect that, find those things, crawl out, pull in all the connections, automatically start synchronizing those each day. We actually pull in the structure of them as well. So you can see your OUs as connection folders, we call them, coming into that. So you can see that whole arrangement of those coming through natively. You can import them at the tenant level or the org level, right? So basically that allows you to then share them out to the organizations within your enterprise or into different workspaces and give permission to those. So you can basically suck in all of your Amazon accounts, for example, and then create different workspaces there for a sales team or for a development team or for a project team, and just give them access to the accounts they need inside their organization or workspace, depending on how you want to structure and set it up. So it's really exciting. So basically, full on discovery, import of those, a permission model for sharing those down, the automatic adding of those to the different accounts for using that. And it's just radically simpler than it was before to manage and scale up in pipes.
One of the things that I often see is that the OU structure or the project structure, et cetera, are aligned to organizational requirement goals like dev environments and that type of thing, whereas permissions are often driven by ever changing organizational structure. How do we support the difference between how the OU model represent in the org versus how people might want to give permissions to the accounts?
In pipes, tenants and organizations are focused on creating and managing resources that you want to share down to workspaces. Workspaces are where the work happens. That's where you do things. That's where you query things. That's where you see your dashboards. All that sort of good stuff goes on at the workspace level. So what we allow you to do is import those organizations, at those higher levels, and then they're arranged into folders, etc. Like I mentioned. You then can grant permissions to those down to the workspaces or organizations, up to you. So you can grant an entire folder. Like you could say you can get all of AWS to the security workspace or organization if you want, while another team, you might say you can have these two connections, right? So you can grant permission to either a folder and everything inside it or specific connections down to those workspaces. And then at the workspace, you're just looking at the connections that make sense for your scope of control. So we think about that sort of the boundary often being on that workspace level. And we actually did a lot of work to try and enhance that boundary in this thing, which is subtle UI things and other stuff to try and make that feel stronger as part of this release. But then typically you'll be sitting in your particular workspace or your particular organization, and you can see the things that you care about and will query those. And it's okay, by the way, for one connection to be in multiple workspaces, right? Like you might have one workspace where it's I see everything and another one where I just have them for my team. That's totally fine.
Really important for larger teams to be able to do that and slice and dice it different ways and give, like you
Right.
said, the security team broader access to triage across project teams, et cetera, just their specific accounts.
Yes. Right. Of course, that all then combines with Datatank as well, right? It's particularly if you're a larger environment, you want to have that speed and the collection of that data proactively. That helps a lot as well. So, we've done a lot of improvements with Datatank in this over the last couple of months as well. But basically, that combination now of being able to discover and import those organizations and all those connections, combined with the scale that we now are able to really running Datatank at very efficiently, gives you a great combination to be able to take pipes and go nuts, basically.
Yeah, and Nathan, for those who aren't familiar with Datatank, because now you're going to be bringing in your whole org, and you could choose, bits of that org or all of that org.
Mm.
By default, we're doing live queries, but if you're trying to do queries across, let's say, 500 Azure subscriptions, what is the right pattern there for doing live queries or maybe considering Datatank, and when would you and why would you use Datatank?
It's designed to give you a lot of choice on how you want to do it. And so there are a few patterns you could look at. We sort of think of them as how fresh and fast do you want the data, really, is what it comes down to. Like, it's something you don't query often. Live is good. And live works incredibly well. I mean, we still are shocked by how great live querying works in the vast majority of cases. But sometimes you've got stuff like you've just got IAM across all your accounts, and you want to query it frequently, and it takes longer. So it's like, well, you set up a Datatank table, and it will just query it for you once an hour or once a day. It's up to you how often you want to run that querying, right? Or keep that freshness up to date. You can do it once a week if you want, right? And basically that then means the minute you go to query those IAM tables, they're right there, and they return instantly, which is faster and more efficient than going off and collecting them each time through live, although there's some in-memory caching for that. So it's sort of a spectrum of when you might do it. What we see customers doing is the tables they use frequently, they land in the Datatank. Just they enjoy the performance of it, they enjoy the consistency of it, all that sort of thing. But for the tables they use less frequently, they just leave them live. And then if they're starting to use one more, they bring it into the Datatank. And if they're not using that one so much anymore, they might turn that table off out of the Datatank, because it's completely in their control. They're just paying for what they use in terms of the compute to create that. So it gives them a lot of control over the cost, the performance, and those sorts of dimensions.
Great to be able to flex in and out of that and take advantage of persistent store or just live queries. So yeah, that was exciting for Pipes. Really looking forward to seeing the scale that people are going to bring into the SaaS service. So looking forward to getting that in the hands of everyone.
For sure.
So that concludes our launch week of our major announcements. So now it's really just heads down into launch week 6. There's a lot of cool and exciting stuff to come, and so really happy to get working on that together as a team and seeing what comes out for next launch week.
Totally. I'd give a shout out for the B-sides that we shared as well, though, today.
Yeah.
Without having to go into a huge amount of detail in it, we did an insane amount of work in this launch week. We can't fit them all into the big announcements, but making all of our docs public, ready for ready for people to contribute, adding more controls, fixed IP ranges in Guardrails for enterprise customers who care about that for SaaS. Like, the list goes on and on and on with other features that we just couldn't fit in a major announcements. So definitely take a look at the B-sides as well. Yeah,
definitely, for sure. There's always hidden gems on the B-side. So
yeah, I think this is the most amount of videos we've produced for any launch week. So it was a huge amount of content, both A side and B side. So it was great.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, really appreciate you both taking the time to talk about this launch week, and we'll see you for the next one.
Thank you. Excited.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.